today is one of my favorite themes. Here's a book. Don't go buy it unless you got a lot of money, but eventually you want to own this book. Eventually you want to have this in your library. Here's a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. He's not a Mormon, but it is one of the library books of my life, because here is a book that tells an amazing story that is so Christian, so Latter-day Saint dominated, it's unbelievable. This is a Latter-day Saint story written by a total non-member. And let me tell you how it fits to what you and I are going to spend the rest of our life to eternity trying to do. He starts off by doing a study. And I'll just tell you briefly the study and then a couple of key points and then tell you some stories. You guys ought to come in. Those are put around the corner. You've got lots of seats. He did a study with a bunch of help and determined that there were a handful of companies upon the planet. Out of the Fortune 500 companies, he studied them. He's actually on the Dow, there's 1,400 companies. And he studied them and had a crew do this to find out if there were any that somehow had a turning point. And he discovered that there were 11 companies out of 1,400 that had a turning point in their business cycle, and had, from that point on, they had gone this way on their graph. Here's the company going like this. Just a good company. Good companies, all of them. They didn't do any that weren't good companies. None going broke. They were all good companies. And then he found out that 11 of them out of 1,400 had a turning point right here, somewhere right here. And it went up to where it jumped up here, and then it had a sustained growth that was at least double-digit more than any of their competitors for a long period of time, like 20 years. Are you with me? They went from being good to becoming a great company and sustained it for over 20 years to qualify for this prestigious position. Only 11 companies in the entire United States Dow he could find had done that. Well, he said to himself, okay, if this turning point was so important, if there was a moment in time you can measure, then can we also go back to those 11 companies and find out why? Why did they do what they did? How did it work? And if it is true that it worked, that it did sustain this great company for a long period of time, is there a place for us to learn something, for all of us who are going to eventually try to do the same thing in life? We're going to try to move from being a good person to a great person, from a good company to a great company, from a good quorum to a great quorum, from a good ward to a great ward, a good mission to a great mission. Is there a lesson? Are there lessons that we could learn, that we could incorporate into our life, whether we're running a church, a ward, a family, or a business, or just moving up in your career? And the answer is, I think you'll be favorably impressed with what they discovered were the key elements in moving from a good to a great life, good to great company. Okay? So I'm just going to give you pieces of it, 2 or 3 pieces only, and then we'll go from there. And if you've got any questions, you go along, ask it. I'm prone not to ask questions enough. I get caught up in my exuberance. First of all, they discovered that there was a certain type of a leader. I guess this is why this hits this, quote, leadership class so heavy for me, is that there's a certain kind of a leader. And they analyzed the leaders of all the companies, all the good companies they analyzed, and then they said, but what is there interestingly different about the fact that these 11 companies all had a certain type of leader? And they categorized them from level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they outlined what each type of leader was. And then they came down to level 5, they discovered was the common denominator. All 11 of those companies had a common type leader at the top. They all had a level 5 leader. Now, what is a level 5 leader? Okay, let me define in simple terms, and you tell me, you who have been in the church more than 2 or 3 years, you tell me if you cannot think of somebody who would fit this bill automatically that you know of in the church. and there's a lot of them, but this one that you'll come to your mind very quickly, I think. They discovered that a level 5 leader is defined as follows. A self-effacing. Now, what does that mean? Self-effacing. Do I want to define that?
Someone who doesn't bring the light, or doesn't try to be in the limelight.
Yeah, you know, it's not about me. It's not about me. A self-effacing, then here are the rest of it. A self-effacing, humble, but passionately driven person. Okay, got it? A self-effacing, humble, but passionately driven individual. Name me a church leader you know right off the bat that comes to your mind. No longer with us. President who?
Hinckley.
President Hinckley is my first choice on that. I mean, talk about a man. You couldn't listen to him at a conference address anywhere and not hear this man is going to tell the story about himself in some joking way, and humble, not trying to take any credit anywhere, and yet tremendously, passionately driven. Incredible driven man. Temples dot the land, missionary work, whatever you want to name. There was a man who spent his life in accomplishing, becoming a leader that didn't need nor want the credit, but was driven to accomplish things for us in a way that was incredible. And you can think of others. I hope you've got some bishops and stake presidents and elders quorum leaders and others in your life you can think of who are that way. And then you need to make a decision. Are you capable of deciding what a level 5 leader is, and can you become a level 5 leader in your life? Will you accomplish that? And once again, it's self-effacing, humble, but passionately driven fellow, okay, or a person. You know, unfortunately, all 11 of those companies had men running it. I apologize for that, because I know you know of people, women in your life, who would fit that bill very well. But unfortunately, we don't have a company that fit that in this book. Okay, that's number one. Please.
One of the things that makes this book a must-read is for anyone who wants to go into business is any book can really prove what it wants to prove. If they want to prove that it's the leaders, they can find a way to prove it. But Jim Collins, when he set up his group, from what I understood, was he told them, I don't want it to be the leader. I want to figure out what changed this, and it better not be just the leader. It's got to be something else. And every time, begrudgingly, they'd come back and say, it's this one thing, and then they changed the direction of the book and went in the direction you're saying. That's what made me read it again.
It's a great read. You really will, you know, even if you're the primary president, you're going to want to read the book eventually, because it's just really, number one, then, become the kind of a leader who everybody will want to follow. And see, that's what's so neat about this book. You know, they list a lot of other companies that had great spurts. There were great people. There's the General Electric story of, what's his name? The big, flowery, flamboyant, powerful, Jack Wilson, right? Yeah, Jack Welch, who was a great leader. I mean, GE became the largest, biggest company in the world during that period of time when Jack Welch was there. And he wasn't a level 5. He was a passionate, but he was not a self-effacing, humble type. He was the typical CEO type. And he got success. But you know what? The company couldn't sustain it once Jack Welch went away. That was the key to these people. These people built an organization that the company could sustain that growth after they retired and quit. They went on for 20-something years, because the company had learned to grow on the backs of the people who were supporters and builders and part of the team, and it wasn't built on one personality that had a jumping start and then it would fall apart when that person leaves. So the level 5 administrator was the key to be able to build that kind of an organization where you don't care who gets the credit, you just want the thing to happen, and you're all working on a team. Then it talks about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus, and I'm not going to tell you all the stories in the book. You can go read it for yourself. But some great themes in there about making sure if you're going to build a company like that, you've got to get the right people. Assemble them around you. Help find the people that fit your needs, fit the niche. They're all self-starters. and become this level 5 type administration. And you've got something that's going to sustain yourself beyond your goal. Okay. Now let's go to another area though that this book that really got me. This is a part that I think is, and let's show that graph. Okay. This here is the heart blood of Mormonism, and the heart blood of Jim Collins, and the heart blood of my theme today, and I want to just be sure this really digs into you. This is a great graph. Let me back up. While it's on the screen, take another note in there. The first chapter is interesting. The first chapter in this book is titled, "Good is the Enemy to Great." I didn't share that, but that's how I want to start. Good is the enemy to great. What does that mean to you? Don't copy the graph. We're going to have it up there for the half hour, so you have plenty of time to copy. Think where I'm going first. What does it mean to you?
I think maybe people will just satisfy what they have right now. They don't want to improve to be great. They just want to be good.
Excellent. Right on.
It makes me think that it may lead to mediocrity.
Mediocrity. That's the word I hoped would come out. Mediocrity works. That.
You can be in your comfort zone and be good, but in order to be great, you have to leave your comfort zone.
Good. Good. Anybody else? Good is the enemy to great. All of you in this room, actually this school has a higher turn-down rate than any other school in the BYU system. Fewer people percent-wise get in BYU than do Provo. Even though Provo has to some degree a higher academic threshold, more people get turned around. So my point is, whether you go to BYU, Provo, Idaho, or here, or Ellis Business College, now that Brother Woodhouse is on campus, we got to include that school, you are obviously a good student. You're one of the best. You represent, with the 30,000 at Provo and the 16,000 at Idaho and the 2,000, you're part of the 50,000 of the best kids in the church. You are the academic A's. A's and B's got you here, which means you are a good student. But Jim Collins found out that good is the enemy to great. Because most companies that they studied were so content with making a 10 or 12% profit, whatever the number was, and being successful, that they had lost their drive and enthusiasm to become one of the best companies. And so most never did drive themselves to become the best. They were content with being good. There is a tremendous risk on this campus, tremendous liability that you carry with you by being a good student, a good Latter-day Saint. You may not be willing to pay the price to become great. And I submit to you, if there's ever a people on a planet of any of God's creations that ought to understand what our bottom line pressure is in our life, it's what? What are we trying to do with our life? Who are we trying to become like? Is God good? Yes. But what else is God? Really, really, really great. He is the ultimate greatness. He is one, he has done everything he needed to do, and the Savior likened to him, to become a person that we could never find a flaw with, nor ever want to not follow or want to be around the rest of eternity. I hope you all went to Brother Hanneman's father's lecture yesterday. If you missed that devotional, you missed a great one. You missed one of the great ones. You would have missed a man who, you had to be impressed by what he said. You had to be impressed by his message. But more important than his message to me was the fact that the Spirit said to me, this man is telling me the truth, and he's living it. He's a credible man. Credible meaning you can believe him, you can trust him. He's not feeding you BS. He's not feeding you some statement that's full of hypocrisy. Most of us at some time in our life, most of the time when we teach or preach or raise a family, run a ward, we border on hypocrisy, don't we? We're never quite as good as we preach. usually. You know, yesterday I think you saw a man that's pretty dang close to being congruent. You know how we used that word? I hope we did. We used it in here where your behavior and your values are meshed together. That's credibility. That's congruency. The Savior is the ultimate congruent person. Never did violate his principles, and his behavior were totally in sync all the time. Now, I don't want to build your dad up to the point that he's Superman, but he's as close as I've seen in a long time to man that I think I could say I believe he fits that mold. I don't believe there's very much fraud in him. I don't think there's much hypocrisy in him, if any. And that's a great goal. It was fun to watch him, fun to listen to him, fun to think about, you know, can I ever preach a sermon that good that I'm living to the point that my audience will say to me, it's going to be hard to pick it apart because I've also watched his life, and his life is congruent with that. That's a great life. Now, if he doesn't get destroyed by pride, by having people say that to him too much, which I don't think it will, then he'll make it. And he'll take a lot of us with him. You were going to have a comment.
Actually, I didn't realize his family was in here, but I was going to say his family is a good testament of him. Sorry.
Just go like this.
I didn't realize until I said that. But his family sat behind him, and you could just see in their eyes their love for him and their testimony of his truthfulness, just in the way in their reaction to what he was saying.
It was a fun experience for me, you know. I mean, articulate, great message, some really insightful thoughts, but most important to me was the fact that I didn't sense. I just felt like there's a man that's telling it like it is, and he's walking his talk. He's not telling me how to do it without doing it himself first. That's greatness. That's what we're all trying to achieve, trying to move our lives. And so the greatest temptation that you're going to face in this life, and as a member of this church and being one of the elite 50,000 students in this church, is that you're going to be tempted to say, I'm okay because I came in 5th in my race last week. You know, if Matt decides that coming in, man, who's that guy that took first? Who's that runner from here that goes fast? Yeah, fastest man on the planet. He's faster than I am. Anyway, you know, but Matt's goal is to catch up with Spence. And Spence? Is to catch up with Spence. He may never do it. That's okay. As long as his goal is always to do it. As long as he's striving to catch Spence. As long as Spence is striving to beat his own record last week. That's greatness. That's what this whole book's about. That's what the Godhead's about. That's what the church is about. He's trying to say, can we get us to catch the vision that we cannot rest on our laurels of mediocrity? Okay, any questions on that? That's a great theme. Boy, it's a great theme. You're all going to be bishops and Leaside presidents someday. And when you do, you need to remember this book because you're going to want to take your ward to higher ground. And they will be, many of your youth and your ward will be content to be good guys, good kids, good girls, good missionaries. And your job is to challenge them to somehow, as a level 5 leader, to put them into the greatness realm so they can someday experience what it would be like to live in the presence of a being who's perfected himself and become like him. Now go to this graph. Jim Collins says that any company, any ward, my words, any state, my words, any family, my words, because it's not in his book, that wants to have a great experience and become a great family, great ward, great state, great mission, great business, there must be 3 elements that they are really good at, that mesh. Because in the little middle part, right there where it says BHAG, the flashing BHAG, we'll get to that in a minute, wherever they intersect is where you want to spend your life. Now follow me for a minute. You'll see the magic in this statement. The 3 elements of a great company, family, ward, stake, or enterprise is that you must have something that has great value to sell or to produce or to give away. If it doesn't have value, run away from it. Now, already, why would this fit it for the mission field, for you missionaries? What were you selling?
Salvation.
Eternal life, salvation, right? The greatest message on the... Did you have a message with a value system to it? Was it valuable? You know why most missionaries got excited about their missions and became very passionate? Because they eventually, when those who did become great missionaries, discovered the fact that they really believed that they had a message that was second to none. There's no other message on the planet Earth that would do more to benefit that family than what I carry as a missionary. And when they believed that, it was easy for them then to become very passionate about it. And when they became very passionate about it, it was usually because they discovered that they discovered somewhere along their education or missionary lines that they could probably be one of the best in the world at it. Now you say to yourself, come on, Richie, that's getting carried away. You know, here we are competing already with 50,000 the best church kids in the world, and in the church system. You're telling me that you really want me to think I can become the best at something? And the answer is, I definitely do. And I found out in my little short life that all of us have a talent or two or three hidden away, that if we would focus on, in the spirit of outliers, which we'll talk about another day, another book you ought to read, when in the spirit of outliers, if you'll be willing to invest the 10,000 hours that he says is there to make a dumb band into a Beatles band, which the Beatles did, okay? Never did like the Beatles, but in case you did. To become a Beatles of the best in the world, you had to invest a whole lot of time, 10,000 hours. Matt's not going to beat Spencer, running once a week. Never happened. He'll always be a good runner, never be a great one. But he could be, and if that's not where he wants to be the best in the world, he needs to spend his time at a university somewhere. Why not BYU while you're here? And identify some of the things that you feel where if you had time to read, study, and work on, you could develop into a talented gift. You either came with a little bit and you build on it with 10,000 hours, or you multiply another area into something. So you're here to find your niche that you can make your mark in. If you're lucky enough to find something you want to do in your life that you think you can be pretty good at if you practice long enough, that you have a tremendous passion for, and it has value, either spiritual or economic, that's where you want to spend your life. Because if you don't have those three things they've discovered, you will always be a good, also-ran company, person, or ward. You'll never be the level 5 leader that can take you to the top and produce what you really want to become. Isn't that insightful? I mean, when I read that and thought about that and pondered that and started to write things about it and share it and think about it, I said, you know, that is a marvelous insight. That's like sitting in devotional yesterday and getting some of those other... You know what? One of the things he said yesterday? You know, I'd preach to you easy right now. I'd say, read the Book of Mormon every day. I'd say that to you. You come to my Book of Mormon class, I'll teach you how to read the Book of Mormon every day. And I'll say to you, if you get really busy, at least read a verse. Every day. His dad dispelled that rumor yesterday. I was put to my theory was put to rest yesterday. Because he convinced me in one little short area that he said, if you want to really have the Book of Mormon permeate your soul, I'll make my own words up here a minute, then don't read unless you got time to read it. Find time every day to read enough, because in the first chapter, you can't get rid of the world in the first chapter. You're still focused on what you're going to go do in a minute, or what you did yesterday, or what's happening. In the second chapter, you begin to focus. By the third chapter, the Book of Mormon's got you. You can't read 3 chapters in the Book of Mormon and not have it affecting your behavior, your feelings, your emotions, your spirit. I thought, you know, said my heart and my brains yesterday said, Richie, that's true doctrine. That's good doctrine. Log that in. Write that down. Put that in your memoirs, because that's true doctrine. Don't tell anybody else, go read a verse and you'll be okay. Find the time to get into that 3rd chapter, and you'll find yourself being touched by the book. If you do it every day, you'll stay touched. Great stuff. You know, well, that's what this book did to me. Is that you got to find you're good at, got value, and you can be passionate about it. And if you do that, now, can that change? Do you have to find that and then be there the rest of your life? You got to work for IBM the rest of your life if that's where you got passion for, if that's where you're good at, if you're good at stuff. Guess what? What do you think about first thing? Is this a quest for one thing or for one profession, one moment in time?